Hey guys, welcome back to BigRedEDC and welcome to this edition of JB on EDC. So today we're going to talk about seconds. I've done a couple of videos about this in the past, but we've seen a lot of seconds coming from Austin over at TPK, and in that I've had a few questions again about them. Should I buy a second? What does a second exactly mean? So on and so forth. So when we're talking seconds, you'll also see it maybe labeled as factory seconds or something like that. There's basically two categories of seconds. You'll have cosmetic seconds and you'll have mechanical seconds. Now, in the past, we've seen knives come from like RoseCraft. And a lot of times when you're talking about cosmetic seconds, coming from them, it is really, really hard to tell what the blemish may be. So let's talk about cosmetic seconds first. So cosmetic seconds is anything, it's pretty self-explanatory, but anything that is cosmetically wrong with the knife doesn't necessarily affect the operability or how the knife works or anything like that. But just a few examples, on let me grab one here. This one is my Carta. Well, here, let's do this one. I've got this one pulled out for mechanical, but it'll work for both. But this is that bourbon bone. It might have a light spot in it. The die doesn't take exactly perfectly all the way around. And when it comes to a RoseCraft knife, they're pretty freaking, their QC is on point. It might have a little mark on the bolster or something, or potentially, a mark on, that's why I didn't want to open this one right away. But anyway, a mark on the blade, or, just something. I know they have sent a few of their seconds out just for me to look at and to show you what they consider a second. And most of the time I'm sitting here looking at the knife and I'm like, I got no clue. I know one of them, where the bone meets the back spring or whatever, there was just a minuscule gap, and they're like, no, that's a second. I'm like, okay. If it's hard to see, okay. But, that's just, that just goes to show how they really, really look at their knives. A shield may be, not exactly flush, whatever the case may be. There's several things that could cause, and it's not only on traditional knives, traditional pocket knives. I've seen Spyderco has done a bunch of second sales. I know they've done a few at like shows and stuff, and I believe they did them on some of their like, what was it, their 15V pair of threes or what. They've done it more than once, and they just mark them down incredibly, and it's it's got a scratch on the blade. So you get, and this is just completely but they sell them for cheap. Half price or less. It's a perfectly good knife. It's got a scratch on the blade. So if you're gonna turn right around and use the knife anyway, Now, when you're talking about mechanical seconds, to me, you're starting to get into a little bit of a range, because hopefully whoever is selling the knife, like RoseCraft, traditional pocket knives, something like that, they're not going to sell a knife that's basically unsafe or not usable. That would just, they're putting their own reputation on the line if they do stuff like that. If a company does sell knives like that, well, then maybe you should think twice. But, now this is a RoseCraft, and this is a mechanical second. And they have sent me out a couple of mechanical seconds, maybe a little light on the back spring or something like that. Still safe, a safe knife, but it's just not up to their standards. Now this one, they sent me this one out, and they said this is one that will never, ever, even remotely come close to selling. And when they send out those seconds like that, they always write on it. What's wrong with it? Now this one says, serious, gritty, stiff pull will require lots of oil and patience. Maybe even some tinkering. So this one is very, very stiff. You got a decent pull. The back spring's just not snappy. Well, you get to the half stop pretty well, but you really, well, I don't know if the pivot is just way over tight or a combination of the pivot and the back spring. But, you know, when talking to Andy and stuff, he's like, oh, that one would never even come close to being sold. So, you know, one of the recent questions I got is, should I buy a second? Well, I'll give you my thoughts on it. When I'm looking at seconds, I am going to be a lot more likely to buy a cosmetic second than a mechanical second. And that also comes to who are you getting it from. Like RoseCraft, okay? If they said, hey, we're selling some mechanical seconds. Okay, I pretty much trust that even though I buy a mechanical second from them, it's still going to be a usable knife. Might be a little bit of a light back spring. It might be off-center. Might even be rubbing a little bit. But they discount them. They sell them as seconds. Okay. That's the one thing you have to remember, is when you buy a second, you're not buying a perfect knife. Not at all. I'll go back to what I said about some of those like RoseCraft seconds. It's darn near a perfect knife because you cannot tell. Some of them you can, but a lot of them that they sent me, I couldn't even tell what made it a second. And, you know, they mark them down, you know, 30, 40%, something like that, and sell them as seconds. Still a perfectly good knife, perfectly usable. It's got a little bit of a mark on it, a little bit of a die, incorrect, you know, bone didn't take the die, whatever the case may be. You know, whoever you're buying it from says a lot. But me, I bought seconds before. Cosmetic seconds. Mechanical seconds give me a little bit more pause. Because, there again, I'm just like, do I want to risk it? I mean, yeah, so I'm getting it for 40% off. You know, I could just buy a regular one and be happy with it. You know what I mean? A cosmetic second, I don't usually have a whole lot of second thoughts about a cosmetic second. So it's something that doesn't exactly look right. Okay, the knife works. I'm going to use it anyway. What's the big deal? The only thing I would suggest is if you go out, you know, and buy a second, wherever you buy it from, right? And especially a cosmetic second. If you buy a cosmetic second and you get it and it's got a bad spot in the die on the bone, don't be mad. I mean, if you don't like it, you can always return it, I guess, but you're buying a second. You know what I mean? I mean, you're buying an imperfect knife. And you're buying in a lot of cases, you're buying a perfectly usable knife that just might be slightly imperfect at a 40, 50% discount. And you're still getting the same good knife. It's just got a little something. Me personally, I can't be mad about that. I just can't, because I willingly bought a second. You know, I will say I give pause at mechanical seconds. Depends on who you buy it from. That's really all I can say. Is I was like, really, you know, like if they do it at shows and you're at the show, you can look at them, you can test them, you can do all the good stuff, and you're like, okay, it might rub a little bit. Other than that, it's a perfectly good knife. You know, I would really have to want to see it, get hands-on before I really, really buy a mechanical second. And you don't see a lot. RoseCraft has sold some in the past, but I don't really see a whole lot of mechanical seconds getting sold. Sometimes it happens, but it's not frequent. Like TPK, he just had, and it may still be going by the time this video posts, but he just had some cosmetic seconds. It all says cosmetic, you know, so little blemish somewhere on the knife, maybe a couple of little blemishes. They mark them down and they sell them. Because, well, should they sell seconds? I have no problem with them selling seconds, especially cosmetic ones. So they mark it down 30, 40% and they sell it. You know, I mean, it's a business. they're trying to make some of their money back so they don't lose money. I think that's perfectly fair. I have no issue with it. Mechanical seconds, there again, it all depends on... Yeah, I'm a little bit more on those. So, just remember when you buy a second, there's always risk involved. It's not a perfect knife. I say there's a lot more risk in mechanical than cosmetic. And I think that's pretty much self-explanatory as well. But I have no problem buying cosmetics. Mechanical, if I could get my hands on it and look at it, I'd be much more, inclined to do so. Buying sight unseen, it's a risk. I understand it's a risk. If I buy it and it's just not, that's on me. That's on me. If I buy it and it's an unsafe knife, well, okay. Maybe you shouldn't have been selling this one. Just saying. But that's kind of my thoughts on the whole seconds aspect. Buy at risk. Buy at your own beware. Buyer beware. But cosmetic, who you buy from, that all just kind of plays into it. For me. So, really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And thank you guys for asking those questions about seconds, because it just gives me an opportunity to give my thoughts on it, and really appreciate it. So, guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you so much for stopping by this morning, or this afternoon, or 3 weeks later, whenever you watch this. And do go check out. I do have, you could probably check in the search bar, just put in there seconds, and you'll probably get a couple other videos come up where I've talked about them. So, thanks a lot, guys. I'll talk to you next time. Like, subscribe, leave me that comment. I love talking to you. Until next time, bye-bye.